Now it's time for a review of what's making the headlines in the newspapers this morning with our super articulate Yolanda. The lady's on fire and
Oh,
she's
thank
got her
you.
feet on ground, burning it hot.
Good morning, Benga. I like that. Thank you for that introduction. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Always a delight to be with you to blaze
Absolutely.
what's in the offing.
Yes,
on the
absolutely.
Headlines.
Let's get right into it then. So let's pull up this day, our sister publication. We'll start with what's on the front of that. And definitely we have one of our top headlines of the day. Senate reopens Electoral Act. House rescinds decision. Aligns with upper chambers on transmission of results. Benga, that is a very big story that I hope you are ready to break down
Indeed.
later on. Next up, let's look at what's going on in the Punch. Same thing on the front, 2027 elections. Lawmakers protest as National Assembly okays e-transmission and the manual backup. Now, outrage as Abaribe leads 14 senators in protest. Minority reps walk out. Still on the front of the Punch, we have France faces new flood nightmares as waters surge. At the bottom there, we have Ramadan Lent begins today across the globe. In the middle, we have a story that we're also going to take a little later. Ondo APC chair beaten as party meeting erupts in chaos. You can see him there on the ground holding his face. We'll break that down some more, Benga, right? You take a good look at what caused all of this ruckus.
Indeed.
As well, we have NUPRC moves to end crude theft with first metering facility. As well, in the Punch as well is the 432 billion probe. The EFCC has extended El Rufai's detention as his lawyer pushes for bail. Moving on to the Guardian, same headline, 2027 elections take shape as APC majority prevails. Legal tussle looms. The electoral bill and looking at what has changed. You can always trust the Guardian to have these very nice graphics that explain their top stories, so kudos to them for that. In the top left, we have Niger residents flee to Benin Republic as terrorists invade Borgu again. We've been seeing one too many of these terrorist attacks in Niger State, and it's quite saddening to see this continuing. As well, in the Guardian, Zamfara governor alleges exclusion from FG's support over party affiliation. In the middle there, we have Remi Tinubu, 6 prayers for Nigeria as Lent Ramadan begins today. Once again, our story, hoodlums invade and disrupt the APC stakeholders meeting that held in Ondo State yesterday. Now let's move on to the Vanguard as well. One of our stories that was in the headlines, release Kanu or return him to Kenya, Southeast monarch tells Tinubu. No equivalence between Kanu, Igboho and presidency has said. Now we move on from there to the international papers. We have in the Financial Times, a young Jesse Jackson there, a rights leader who saw U.S. go from King's killing to Obama presidency. A very sad loss indeed. Moving on to the Sun, pressure ramps up with 7 UK forces on the Epstein case. Lolita flights logs checked. Cops in Andy's sex probe. Oh, unfortunately, it seems like Andrew Mountbatten has found himself in yet another controversial frenzy. Moving on to the Daily Mail, we have pressure piles on Andrew as 4th police force probes Epstein claims. Essex officers to examine whether paedophile trafficked women on private jet into Stansted. Now pressure is mounting on Andrew Mountbatten. What a very royal embarrassment, pun intended. Now on the I newspaper, we also have the same story. The 3rd police force examines Andrew's links. So some are saying 3rd and some are saying 4th, depending on which headline you are looking at, which paper you're carrying. But let's go back to our local papers and look at a couple of stories in detail. Starting with This Day, and we have the same headline that will pull both from This Day and The Punch. Reps back real-time electronic transmission of election results. Now, Benga, the National Assembly yesterday approved the electronic transmission of election results, but they have retained manual collation as a backup. This is the area that many Nigerians expressed to be flawed and duplicitous. Protests were triggered yesterday. We watched our reports as there was a walkout as well by opposition lawmakers. There were heated debates in both chambers ahead of the 2027 general elections. Now, what was initially meant to be a routine legislative correction now turned into absolute chaos. We saw arguments, we even saw name calling and a clear breakdown of the entire scenario. Another interesting point that I'd like you to break down, Benga, is, the partisan finger pointing that we were seeing yesterday. What do you make of all this drama?
Indeed, I want to congratulate the people of Nigeria for making their voice come out louder, stronger, and clearer in the shaping of our present world and in negotiating our future. It's not about the triumph. What we've seen is political banditry, gangsterism, and rascality at its highest, because they are to represent the people. It's like a social contract in which you know that if every man is lord unto himself, it ends in anarchy. So we have transferred that franchise to representative in a social contract for them to represent us. But now we have seen the abuse of majority having their way and minority having the say. But posterity would judge, because this is an era of technology. We saw those who stood for fair and credible election. And what do we mean? This is a system. We're talking about something as simple as if Money Points could achieve a nationwide electronic real-time transfer.
Yes.
And telcos are also saying this is achievable. There cannot be more technologically driven or inclined than the telcos experts that are saying a real-time electronic transfer is achievable. Why do you want to mortgage our electoral future? Why do you want to mortgage the people's, or even subjugate? What we're saying is subjugation. That is conquering the people's will. It's more than subverting. Subverting means trying to manipulate, but now this is total subjugation of the people's will. And we're talking about the fly in the ointment, that controversial section 60, subsection 3, that the people are demanding for a mandatory, unconditional, real-time electronic transfer of results. And another area in which there seems to be executing a parliamentary coup is the section 84 of the electoral draft amendment bill, which they've now changed it to consensus mode of primaries and direct mode of primaries. Everyone knows that direct mode of primaries has never been so feasible. So now, removing that indirect means that you are encouraging the possible imposition of candidates. So this is, but the fact that Nigerians could come out, the fact that the past political ignorance had been conquered. Now we have seen more Nigerians understanding what's at stake, and we've seen that brazen shamelessness from our political leaders to subjugate the democratic future of Nigerians. It's a huge shame and a conquest and a total victory for the people of Nigeria. It shows that we have made our voice clear in the shaping of our world. And I think that posterity would preserve a place for those who stood for free and credible elections, and for those who are threatened by free and credible elections.
So Benga, you are absolutely right in your sentiments, but I also want to look at the element of the type of caliber of people that showed up for the protests yesterday. That was an underlying statement of how real this is, of where we are, of how important and pivotal this decision is. But what I want to look at as well is the attitude of the lawmakers, and that's where I want to pick your brain and hear what you have to say about this. You know, as that chaos broke out, there was all of this name calling. That in itself shows that there's so much division, even in the fact that decisions were made.
Yeah, what we're saying is political sophistry and illusion. You remember that at some point they wanted to introduce an envelope way of presenting a draft in which everything would be adopted hook, line, and sinker, and the and the reps protested. They said, we want a clause-by-clause adoption of the drafts. And all of a sudden, they went into a closed-door session, and we saw what eventually came out.
Yes.
And from the discussion that was held yesterday on Arise News Night, we saw that was not a bipartisan approach. That was not a bipartisan decision. And we saw the use of words by some people calling some people ole, thieves. That's the meaning. And you heard the name of the party they were calling ole. I think that there's a need for our leaders to show some level of integrity, to show leadership by example in the handling of the affairs of the nation. This is a critical is a critical exercise in determining the quality of life, in determining good governance for the people of Nigeria.
Absolutely.
And it looks like a daylight robbery.
Oh yeah. Well, let's stay in politics and look at another incident. We have in The Guardian, if we can pull that up and just put that on our screens, we have the Ondo APC chair beaten as party meeting erupts in chaos. Now, a pre-Congress stakeholders meeting of the APC in Ondo State turned violent yesterday as suspected thugs invaded the party secretariat in Akure, leaving many injured and the state chairman and a commissioner beaten to a pulp, as we saw. Now, an eyewitness said the attackers, armed with dangerous weapons, shouted that they were from Ayeda Tiwa and called, "We don't want Congress in Ondo. The governor is in charge. The governor is the leader of the state and the governor is in charge." Another quote I have here is, "Nobody can query the authority of the governor, and anybody who wants to talk about Congress in Ondo State will be assassinated. If you talk about Congress in Ondo State, you will be assassinated," end quote. Now, how damaging is this type of thing to the APC's credibility, Benga, ahead of the Ward Congress? And at the same time, what are the political implications of thugs allegedly invoking the governor's name?
So now, I talked about political banditry.
Yes.
And we are seeing it playing out in the security front. So it tells us the kind of leaders, this kind of process, this kind of hijack and potential imposition of candidates will bring. This is happening just barely 24 hours before the proposed nationwide Congress by the APC.
Right.
And the Congress is meant to take place in 203 wards within the state.
Yes.
So the assault on engineer Ade Adetimeyi, the Ondo APC chairman, needs to be investigated. We've not seen that political will. We've not seen that strong practical condemnation of that act. No one has been brought to book. No one has been apprehended. And they said clearly they are from Ayeda Tiwa. So if that is true, it means that there is a plot for a coronation of candidates across the ward level to build the political structure of the beneficiary, which points to the governor. So the governor needs to come out to clear his name by making sure that this dastardly act is not sustained under his watch.
Right. Well, I think there's a lot to look into with that. Also, these threats, Benga, using and invoking the name of the governor, is there any credibility to that sort of action?
Yeah, it will still remain strongly indicative. Yeah, not completely speculative, but strongly indicative. Why we cannot conclude, the governor needs to show practical steps. He needs to show that this is practically condemned, and he needs to prove that there is no space for such political gangsterism within a state. Because this is happening just 24 hours to the nationwide Congress, which will be taking place, Ward Congress, which will be taking place across 203 wards within those states. So there is a need for the governor to come out clean within this. The APC chairman on those states cannot just, the engineer Adetimeyi cannot be staging an attack on himself.
Right.
It's not possible.
Well, Benga, let's quickly look at another local story before we go to the international headlines for the sake of time. We have Tinubu unveils national industrial policy to boost economic diversification, jobs, and others. I believe this story comes from this day, but it's not on the front page. But let's look at the details of it. President Bola Tinubu launched a new plan to called the Nigerian Industrial Policy (NIP) to boost local manufacturing and reduce Nigeria's dependence on imports. Now, the goal is to make it easier for businesses to operate in the country, open more factories, and of course to create more jobs. Now, Tinubu said success will be measured by the number of factories and jobs that will be created, not by policy documents. You know, we see a lot of this policy making. So it's now different now that the president is saying that the success will be measured by the number of factories and the jobs that will come out of it. Now, as well, business leader Aliko Dangote praised the move but stressed that local industries must be protected from excessive imports. He also warned that without stable electricity, industrial growth will be impossible. Now, in simple terms, the government wants Nigeria to produce more of what it consumes, create jobs, and compete better in Africa. But Benga, as great as this sounds, this is the question I have for you. In a country that has consistently embarrassing breakdowns in electricity, is it realistic to want to pursue such an initiative where we clearly have a breakdown in one of the most important sectors that would either make or break this type of policy?
Yolanda, this can only be deeply thought-provoking. You've said it all. I think we've played lip service, and considering the fact that a draft as important as the national industrial policy is coming 3 years into the life of this administration does not show enough seriousness. We are talking about a nation that needs economic revamping. That explains why we've had that recurring decimal stability. It's been difficult for us to move from economic stability to real economic growth because our industries are not powered. Right. And the chairman of the Dangote group said yesterday that he has just one advice, that there's a need to power the industry. We're talking of job creation, and that reminds me of the interview I had with late former president during my Nigeria at 50 series, former President Shehu Shagari. He talked about the Ajakuta steel industry. Right. And he said that when it got to the point of training the Nigerian personnel on how to develop the steel industry, that there were a lot of foot dragging. So no Western power, no foreign investor, no foreign stakeholder would wish that the country be economically independent, because Ajakuta Steel Company remains a huge paradox of Nigeria's potential. And I keep saying it, we have a voluminously lavish serendipity that the country presents when it comes to our immense possibility in industrial development. Just take a look at Ajakuta Steel Company. For over decades now.
Yes, decades, absolutely.
Billions of naira has been spent on this industry. Still remains moribund. And we're talking about an industrial policy. So can we have a concrete action plan that would turn around the fortune of this potential augury that would change, that has the instant capability to change our narrative for us to become an economic powerhouse? In 1962, Nigeria, Brazil, and Indonesia were posited as the three countries that would be the economic powerhouse of the world. But now what do we have? Nigeria is still lagging behind. And without this industry, we're still going to continually be tied to this importation. Our economy is still going to be largely import driven. And that's not really going to record economic growth. We've identified power that will stimulate a lot of small and medium, the growth of small and medium enterprise. And that's the sure roadmap to economic, not just economic growth, but the flourishing of the entire country, and to make us to be the real leader of the black race.
That's right.
That you and I can be proud of. I think for now we've had a prodigal narrative that we need to change as a matter of urgency.
Now, speaking of leaders of the black race, I want us to take a look at our final story, and we'll take a look at it quite quickly, and it's on the front of the Financial Times, and it's our international headline of the day. Jesse Jackson, civil rights activist whose moral vision, fiery oratory reshaped America, dies at 84. Now, he had been hospitalized in recent months and was battling progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP. He was a known protege of Martin Luther King Jr. and rose to prominence during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. After King's assassination in 1968, Jackson became one of America's most influential civil rights leaders. He founded the Rainbow Coalition, promoting a broad multiracial political alliance within the Democratic Party. Now, beyond activism, he negotiated the release of prisoners abroad and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the year 2000. Now, tributes have been pouring in globally, including from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and PDP chieftain Benga Hashim, who praised his global legacy in justice and democracy. Through his voice, he has fallen silent, but indeed, his message lives on. Benga, the world mourns another legend.
This is deeply tragic.
Yes.
We're talking about one of the most prominent civil rights leaders globally. And, you know, his life trajectory reflects a man that survived against all odds.
Absolutely.
He was born in South Carolina, and at some point he was appointed as a shadow Senate representative for Colombia, and he stood against all odds. He spoke truth to power, and he was a lead critic of the Reagan administration. Then you remember then, and now he had a TV show on CNN for about close to 10 years, where that popular both side of Jesse Jackson, in which he brought to light the ills of the society from the standpoint of justice and fair play. And he contested for president. Initially was taken to be a fringe candidate when he contested in 1984, but he came third, and he became the first runner-up in the 1988 election. So now you could imagine someone who is a strong, unwavering protege of Martin Luther King Jr. So he had spoken to world on the need for equality, justice, and fair play, and he has been unwavering for decades. And you remember he went to accompany the late president of South Africa from prison. Right. Then it shows his commitment to democracy, even in Africa, to freedom, human rights, and the triumph of the people's wish. And that is, it resonates on the reality we find ourselves now, that we need to learn from leaders of these prominent leaders that have shown practical example of the right of the need for human rights to prevail in our polity.
Thank you for those glowing words, Benga. And to end the newspaper review, we say rest in peace to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Truly, his legacy will continue to inspire generations.